I'm in a bit of a import mood today, so as long as I'm going over toys that just came in the mail recently, I thought it was time to do something along the lines of Transformers Adventures, the Japanese version of Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015. Much prefer the Japanese name, which is far less confusing. Their toy line is mostly the same figures, just much better paint apps, but this one is a little bit special. This is Battle Grimlock, an extensive remold of Fall of Cybertron Grimlock, all for the sake of giving that team a Grimlock that's actually the size he is in the show compared to the others. Because let's be honest, your RID 15 collection looks a little bit weird with Grimlock being just as short as Bumblebee, doesn't it? As you can see, he is the more modern style T-Rex, horizontal rather than the 80s vertical of the G1 Grimlock, and extensively remolded. I'll show you the robot modes together just so you have an idea of how much got changed, but you can already tell there's a lot different here. You can see the spines have been added in, the tail is different down the legs, everything, especially in the head too. I love the color scheme on this guy. He is done up mostly in black plastic and very vibrant green painted on all over him. There's only a few parts that are actually molded in green. It's a little bit off color-wise, but not too bad. It's an extremely striking color scheme. I mean, I really like the design of the RID Grimlock, which kind of ironic. He has the same color scheme as the other RID Grimlock that isn't a dinosaur at all, but that's more coincidence than anything, I think. But yeah, I love how it's strewn about here. I love how the green is highlighting so many little areas. It's extremely striking. Very cool. I'll give you a close-up shot of the head, which is absolutely awesome all the way around. I can get the light inside. Even the little eye was painted. There's a little bit of trim around the eye just to bring it out a little bit more. The eyebrows painted separately. The crest is painted separately. He's got paint all over him to make this work. Extremely cool. Now, if you've never seen the toy itself, it's fairly hefty. Now, I will say it does still have the main problem that a lot of people had. It is very hollow on the underside. There's no plate or anything to cover that up. They worked with what they had. It's still the same old mold, so it's a bit of a bummer. But I don't see it as that big of a deal. I mean, I've seen far worse on older toys too. Portion-wise, I like the heavy set nature of the figure, and in this mode, I will say I've never been sold on how the tail works. The tail is the robot mode legs kind of clamped together, and it does create this very thick tail that didn't look right on Grimlock before and didn't look right on this Grimlock either. So that's a little bit strange. Other than that, though, we've got a lot of cool stuff going on here. I like the little paint apps here, like all those little touches of yellow throughout that centerpiece on the hip. And you can also see they too have the poker chip design, though in Japan you'll notice it's far more colorful. So apparently little scanners on their smartphones work a little bit better on these things. But regardless, it's still a white poker chip on the hip of a dinosaur. It still looks odd. Yeah, I would prefer without. I know a lot of people that would prefer without. So he does have a ton of things going on. I mean, I can show you full-on details here. He's got little panel lines that go all the way around him. I will say some of the more simple areas that are obviously based on the cartoon kind of clash a little bit with some of the more mechanical areas on the original Toys molding. But there isn't enough of the original Toys molding for it to really stand out. I kind of have to point it out to you in order for you to get it. But you can see there is still plenty of heavy molding in here. He does not look boring or flat on any of these surfaces of the toy. It's, again, very well done, and I am a big fan. For articulation, we do have the little dinosaur arms that are ball jointed. And we also have, you have to unpeg them, but you can get hips and knees out of this as well. So there is that, just in case you want to have something a little bit more akin to the old school T-Rex. Though the head is not going to allow you to do that. It is solidly in there. However, you do have a jaw that opens up both ways, so you have a big, wide open maw of teeth coming at you. That's always fun. So he's got some articulation to him, a little bit of play value in this mode. If you want a little bit more, he does have weapon accessories. They don't really peg in great here. He does have holes here on the hips where they can go in. It's not the best of looks. Not unless, you want to plug it in this way and take out velociraptors with one big twist. But outside of that, it's a little bit strange for him to hold his robot mode weapons here. So let's go ahead and get him to robot mode so I can show them to you properly. So first, I'm going to disengage the tail, which is mostly just pegged in with these two bits on the end. The tail hinges out to form the legs. You're going to want to make sure that these inner clips inside the legs actually connect, and sometimes they can be a little bit stubborn about it, so just make sure you get it in there. Oh, come on. There we go. Fold out the feet. One of them gets a little bit stuck on mine, but that's okay. Unpeg the hips and fold them out, and we can create the arms that way. The hands themselves, built in, just flip that out and close that up. Simple as that. And on the other side, done and done. Now the interesting part, a little bit of a change to the transformation of the original toy. Now we can still, there we go. We can still bring this all down, fold this in to create, oh come on, hold in for me. To create the shape that's going to fit into this back piece and fill up that gap. But we also have this piece that can fold over and close up this huge gap in his backpack and make things a little bit more solid from the top down. He now has a gap here, but let's ignore that for now. We can't have everything, can we? We'll fold these little dino hands up just to get them out of the way. And just like that, we have RID Grimlock in his full robot mode. And looking big and buff as I would expect RID Grimlock to look. This is such a step up from his little tiny Warrior class toy that, man, they so needed a Voyager class. Just for figures like this, I mean, this feels like that Grimlock from the show. I mean, some reused parts aside, it's still like really what this toy needed. I'll give you the close-up of the head as we are always doing, straight off the bat. And this is the one area where I'm a little bit disappointed in the figure because the face sculpting is pretty plain, to be honest with you. It's a very straight face. It doesn't have a lot of expression to it, which is something which does kind of indicate to me, this is definitely a Takara design thing. But at the same time, that's not how Grimlock looks in the show. I would expect some kind of goofy sneer or some kind of angry expression. This is just very flat and neutral, and is probably the one thing I don't see him looking in the show. So that's a bit of a disappointment. But what about the rest? Because, that's what the rest of the toy is for, being the rest and all. I need to watch my words a little bit more carefully. I will go ahead and get that comparison out of the way now. And here you can really see how much remolding went into this figure to change it up. There are very, very few parts left from the original toy. I mean, right from here, the only things you can really tell are the forearms are the same on both, as are the feet. But the legs, midsection, chest, head, shoulders, and yeah, even the thigh pieces, at least the upper thigh, are completely new parts. It's almost a completely new toy. And just, it's an exceptional amount of work. I mean, extremely impressive on the part of Takara to go to that much effort to create an appropriate new toy so you can actually have a Grimlock that's the proper size. And just to give you, since we were in the mood for comparisons, doesn't that look better? Like right off the bat, does that not look better? Looks better than having Grimlock down here. Grimlock's actually shorter than Bumblebee in the US toy line, which is bizarre. So let's talk about the toy itself. It's mostly got the same things going on from its beast mode, so not a whole lot new is exposed. A little bit more yellow here on the shoulders for the inner details, and a few bit more bits of paint on the outside of the hips here. A little bit more green, a little bit more black and gray. Not a whole lot of additions to the color scheme, but man, it still works. It still looks so good, and it's very RID Grimlock. Really big fan of this figure. You can see the backpack has been cleaned up. It is still quite a bit of junk back there, but hey, at the very least, I can't see much of the T-Rex. I will tell you, if I'd have to play with the original Grimlock a little bit more, but from what I can tell, just from the feel of this toy, everything feels quite a bit more solid. The plastic feels a little bit thicker, everything feels a little bit heavier, and I'm actually that wouldn't be a bad idea. Just okay, hang on. I'm super curious. Yeah, we're doing this. I actually just want to see. Okay, 5.45. 5.75. Okay, so it doesn't sound like much, but in the terms of plastic quantity, that's actually a pretty big upswing. So yeah, he's a heavier bot. There is more plastic to him. And keep in mind, he doesn't have the light-up gimmick that the original Grimlock had. And he still manages to be a heavier toy. You definitely have a lot more plastic going into this one than you did the original. That said, there are still a few hang-ups. The legs are still pretty thin. That's due to the transformation and everything having to fit in proportion. And the legs are... The dino tail's already thick enough. You know, they really didn't need to make it worse or anything. So that's a concession, unfortunately. But like I said, everything else feels a little bit thicker and a little bit more sturdy, which is what a lot of people didn't like about the original. For articulation, the head does rotate. It's a little bit restricted. That's as much as it's going to go. The shoulders have detents going this way and this way. So you have a universal range of articulation. It also swivels this way too, which actually provides some really cool and kind of unique posing options thanks to those huge shoulder guards covering up all those extra hinges. So it still looks natural even though you're like really widely spacing them out. There's also this inner hinge that allows you to widen the shoulder or extend the arm a little bit too. So it's kind of an advanced level of articulation in the shoulders for this figure. There's a bicep rotation as well as a detented? Is that a word? It's a word now. A detented elbow. I'm just making stuff up now, as I always do. Rotation at the wrist. No waist. Still no waist. Big, heavy detents here in the hip, and the outward hip does not have as much range. It's just a molding limitation on that one. Still, I wouldn't expect high kicks out of Grimlock, so it's not a terrible loss. Thigh swivel all the way around. There's detents in the knee as well. However, this is one of those times where there's two hinges here, and the one you don't want bending is the one that's looser than the one you do want bending. So you got to be a little bit careful with how you actually pose and position those. So that's the articulation rundown. He's pretty solid. He's got everything that the original Grimlock toy had, and he has quite a bit more than the warrior class. So he definitely stands out there. Two parts that you might have guessed from a quick look at them before that have not changed are the weapon accessories. And this is a bit unfortunate. I thought something a little bit more characterful would have been in mind, but then again, they were just accessories. It was on a separate mold, so I can see why they didn't go off and change this as well. I kind of like to think of this as Grimlock before he came to Earth, when he still had his memories and all the weapons that came with them. Still, it doesn't look bad on him, though. I do like the yellow. It's kind of create this little Energon look to it. Kind of gets away from the fire motif of the original. A little bit of gunmetal just to make it look a little bit more weapon-ish. It's not a bad fit on him. They still look good as weapons, maybe a little bit more detailed than the RID's weapons would tend to be, but I don't know. It still doesn't look too bad, so why not? It's just the weapon accessories at this point. The main point of the figure is to give you a good-sized Grimlock that looks like he's the appropriate size for the rest of your RID Autobot team. And in that sense, I think it's a huge success. I absolutely love this figure. It fixes some of the problems I had with Grimlock, though I tend to like that toy more than a lot of people do. And it definitely fixes the biggest problems that the American issue Grimlocks have had. So yeah, I think he's a worthy pickup if you can find him. This toy, for some reason, seemed to be released in really limited numbers, and a lot of delays happened with the toy, so I don't know if it's even feasible to find one affordably at this point. But if you happen to stumble across one, keep the review in mind and judge for yourself if it is worth whatever the seller's insane asking cost ends up being. Because it really does help out the RID collection a lot to have a good-looking Grimlock that is actually the right size.